So in the last tutorial, you learned that whenever we define parameters for our functions, we should always supply values, otherwise we'll get an error. Let's look at that error one more time. So I'm going to delete the second argument and only pass John. Run our program. We get this message. Greet user missing one required positional argument. So these arguments that we have here, like John and Smith, we refer to these as positional arguments, which means their position or order matters. In other words, the first argument we add here is the value for the first parameter, and the second argument is the value for the second parameter. So if we change their position or order, we'll get different result. Let's take a look. Let's pass Smith first and then John. Okay. Delete. That's good. Let's go with this. So instead of getting hi John Smith, we get hi Smith John. So that is the reason we refer to these arguments as positional arguments. Their position or order matters. But in Python, we also have keyword arguments, and with those, the position doesn't matter. Let me show you how they work. So let's say here we want to pass John as the value for the first name parameter. We can simply specify that here. So first name equals John. Now what we have here is a keyword argument. So this combination of having the parameter name followed by its value is what we call a keyword argument. And with these keyword arguments, the position doesn't really matter. So here we're supplying John as an argument for the first parameter. Now similarly, we can use a keyword argument for Smith. Let me show you. So last name equals Smith. So now we have two keyword arguments. So with these keyword arguments, we don't have to worry about the order of the parameters. That doesn't mean we should always use keyword arguments. Not really. Most of the time, we use positional arguments, but in certain situations, these keyword arguments help us improve the readability of our code. So on line 7, it's quite clear that we're supplying Smith as the last name and John as the first name. Now, in this particular example, even if we didn't have the keyword arguments, just passing two positional arguments like John and Smith would be sufficient because it's easy to guess what is the purpose of these arguments. But sometimes you're dealing with functions and you're passing numerical values to them. In those situations, it may not be quite clear what these values represent. Let me show you an example. Let's say we have a function for calculating the total cost of an order. So we can call that calculate underlying cost. So when calling this function, we need to supply three pieces of information. One is the total cost of all the order items, let's say $50. The other is the shipping cost, let's say $5. And the last piece is a discount, let's say 0.1. Someone reading this code may not be sure what these three values represent. In this case, we can improve the readability of this code by using keyword arguments. So we can prefix each value with the name of the parameter they target. For example, we can set total to 50 and then shipping to 5 and discount to 0.1. Now, if we give this code to someone else, they can immediately tell what these values represent. So that is the power of keyword arguments. So here's what I want you to take away. For the most part, use positional arguments. But if you're dealing with functions that take numerical values, see if you can improve the readability of your code by using keyword arguments. You simply prefix the arguments that you pass with the name of their parameters, and this will increase the readability of your code. Now, there is one more thing you need to know about keyword arguments. These keyword arguments should always come after positional arguments. Let me show you what I mean. So, back to our simple greet user function. Let's use a keyword argument for the first name. So, let's set first name to John and see what happens. Look, we immediately get this error. Take a look. Positional argument after keyword argument. So when calling this function, we're supplying one keyword argument and one positional argument. And Python doesn't like this. So if you're mixing positional and keyword arguments, you should always use the positional arguments first and then the keyword arguments. In other words, let's remove this keyword argument here. So John is now a positional argument, is targeting the first parameter, right? Now, after this positional argument, we can supply any number of keyword arguments. So if we set last name to Smith, look, Python doesn't have any problem with this because we're adding a keyword argument after a positional argument. So let's quickly recap. For the most part, use positional arguments. If you're dealing with functions that take multiple numerical values and it's not quite clear what those values represent, use keyword arguments to improve the readability of your code. And finally, if you're passing both positional and keyword arguments, use the keyword arguments after the positional arguments.